I'm glad to be here. Harvard is an exciting place. It's a very old place, and I'm from California, where nothing's that old. We give plaques for houses that are like 60 years old. It's like a historical monument. And here, you got a graveyard in your city right there. I walked by it, and I saw where George Washington assembled his troops and things like that. And you have this amazing history here. And what I'm loving it is how America's changing, that now it's including Latinos so much more. We are the fastest growing minority group in the world, at least in America, and we keep growing more and more because we're a very loving people. So, you know, every quinceañera party afterwards, there's another baby made. So I don't know the statistics about that, but that's my theory. I started out, and I want to start out this speech to really tell you about how I started out. Because my position, being in Hollywood and writing and producing and all that stuff, it's not impossible. It is not impossible. It's amazing how, if you get the word impossible out of your mind, you will see all the ability that you have. And I work in the media, so a lot of times you don't see Latinos really portrayed correctly in the media. You know, and in fact, I did write down some notes about that. There was a survey by Hill and Knowlton. They did a survey where they called up, and they did online, and they asked, and this was on the website Latino Rebels, which I'm on the board, and it talked about how Americans thought about Latinos, and I'll read some of it. 33% of all Hispanics are undocumented, according to the average American. That's what they believe. 80% of Hispanics are involved in some form of crime. 80% think that Hispanics have not learned English. The Latinos we don't see is the Latinos I want to talk about today. Oh, here's a nice thing. 90% associate Latinos with strong family values. This is why we have good crime families and narco families and things like that. Good cartel families. And 70% think Latinos are a burden on education. Think about that. Latinos, I believe, need a publicist to change how people think about Latinos, what our image is and who we really are. And being here today, I see who we really are. And I start off just like any other Latino here. I was a Mexican-American kid. I lived in my family started the Barrio Logan. It's a barrio in San Diego. It's a tough barrio. And my grandfather came from Chihuahua, Mexico, and he went to New Mexico, and he moved to Chihuahua. That's all right. I like that. Chihuahua. So my grandfather came from Chihuahua, and he came to San Diego, California, and there was a middle-class neighborhood, and he moved on in, and he created and turned it into a barrio in just a few generations. It was a boring middle-class neighborhood. He came into there. He brought cockfighting. He brought drinking. He brought all sorts of my family members, and my family, my grandfather, who was very tall and light, he was a güero. And I'm a güero too. I don't know, do you know the word güero? I mean, tall, good-looking Latino male. So that's what my grandfather was. He was a güero, but my grandmother was a little Tarahumara Indian type, very indigenous. She was very dark. And she came in, and the man that sold him the house said, "Wait a minute, are you Mexican?" He said, "Yes." "Well, it's too late now. I bought the house." And he got in there. There's always one of us will get there first. And when we get there, our job is to bring the other Latinos with us. That's our job. Same me working in Hollywood. First, I didn't really realize I was Latino, and I told him it's a true story. Everything I'm about to tell you today is true. I told my mom back in La Mesa, where I grew up, La Mesa, a little town of La Mesa. Now, our next door neighbor town was called El Cajon. So La Mesa, El Cajon, California. So it just taught me the Spanish missionaries had no imagination, whatever. They just named these places. So I told my mom, I'm going to play with the Mexican kids down the street. And she said, "You are Mexican, so you can stay home and play with yourself." But I got bored and was worried about going blind, so I went and played with the kids down the street. Because down the street, they're real Mexican kids. They lived on a chicken ranch nearby our house. And to me, those were Mexicans because I saw a chicken walk through their front room. An actual chicken walked through their front room like it was a relative or something. It was like, just made himself at home, just walked through. Now that to me was a real Mexican. I wasn't even quite there at all. So before I went there, I went to the elementary school and I was playing handball against the court, and this American kid, Anglo kid, walks up and he says, "Hey, that's my ball." It wasn't, it was my ball. I brought it from home. He took my ball away from me. And he pushed me. And he said, "That's my ball, you wetback." I know. But I had never heard the term wetback before. At home, no one called us a wetback. We didn't say, "Pass the salt, wetback." I didn't know what the word meant. I thought it was a good word. It didn't sound bad. Wetback, quarterback, halfback, dryback, wetback. I mean, really not much to that. So just to play it safe, I kick his ass. So I beat this kid up. I was involved with crime back then. I was probably 80%. So I beat him up. Schoolyard supervisor comes up to me. She says, what did you do to him? What did you do to Bradley? He was crying. Snot bubbles, looking horrible on a corner. He didn't look so proud then, but there he was. And I said, "He called me a wetback." And she goes, "Are you Mexican?" I said, "Yes." "Well, then you are a wetback." True story. I'm not changing a single word of that story. And I used that story to start my first play, which was Latins Anonymous. I started the play that way. I took what was the reality of my story and put it on stage, and I made it comical. I made it funny. I empowered myself through writing my story. And I wanted my story to be understood and heard. Now think about that. That's little La Mesa, California. And that little Mexican kid down the street who I wanted to play with was named Juan Vargas. Juan Vargas. He's a Mexican kid. And up the street was another Mexican family. So now cut to, I'm at the NCLR speaking to the National Council of the Rasa. I've gotten all my awards. I've gotten all these awards. And I'm there, and they put next to me is Elena Ochoa. Elena Ochoa, the astronaut, right? She turns to me and she goes, "Rick, it's me, Elena." I go, "Hey, Elena, how you doing?" "Rick, it's me, Elena." I'm thinking, wow, she's very spacey. This is not good. Twice now she said, "It's me, Elena." So I said, "Hi, Elena." "The astronaut." I go, "Yes, you're the astronaut. Congratulations." She goes, "You went to school with my brother, Ty Ochoa. You were in junior theater with him." I'm like, "Oh my God, Ty Ochoa was your brother?" Because we grew up together. I grew up with Elena Ochoa, the astronaut, in my neighborhood. And that little kid down the street was Juan Vargas, is now a senator from California. Wow. He's a state senator. So in this little area of La Mesa, the table, for those who don't speak Spanish, grew up 3 Latinos who I believe have done something significant in their lifetimes. We did that because each one of us was forced, in a strange way, to be the best of who we could be. Someone asked me yesterday, a girl came up to me, a young woman, she said, "You've done so much. Do you ever feel the pressure on your shoulders of doing a lot of things?" I said, "Absolutely. I feel pressure every day. Every day is pressure. Even coming here to speak in front of you guys is pressure." First of all, I've done Showtime specials, I've done all these things, and normally it's 1,000 people. When I actually see you, it terrifies me. I have lights in my eyes, and I'm thinking, is she getting it? Is he getting it? Oh my God. So I'm doing that. I'm terrified every single time I do something. I'm always terrified, and I always feel pressure. In fact, 2 years ago, what happened to me was I ended up in a coma. I was directing the CBS Diversity Showcase, I was doing movies and things like that, and I was overworked. Latinos, Mexicans, all us Latinos, we have a very strong work ethic. We will work ourselves to death. In fact, my father, he went to Vietnam as a contractor working on the jets. And I said, "When'd you go to Vietnam, Dad?" He goes, "Oh, I went there for the overtime." "You went to Vietnam for the overtime? When'd you go?" "Oh, it's during this holiday." I go, "Was it the Tet holiday?" "Yeah, the Tet holiday." "You went to Vietnam for overtime during the Tet offensive." Now that's a Mexican work ethic. That's a Mexican work ethic. That's what we have. So there I was, feeling all this pressure and working very hard with the diversity program. I've done it for over 9 years. 4,000 people, 4,000 Latinos actually applied for the job, or not Latinos, across diverse groups. 4,000 applied. 2,500 actually auditioned for me. And that includes the LGBT community. I choose 20 to 25 and I put on a show. Of that show, in the 9 years I've done it, when it started, no one thought it would work. Now there are 22 series regulars that have come from that show. Over 6 development deals have come from that show. 3 members have moved on to Saturday Night Live from that show. That's not counting the Latinos I've worked with in my show, Latino Logs. Latino Logs was on Broadway. It starred Eugenio Derbez, Jaime Camille. No one said a show on Broadway would work. It was impossible. That show on Broadway will never work. In fact, when we came to Broadway, the amazing part about it is an investor was investing in our show. I'll tell you a quick story about this. I was so happy because I was doing a movie with Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton. I actually did coach Perez, but I did work with Paris too, Paris Hilton. And there I was with Eugenio Derbez. We're in this movie. And one of the people that put up the money for the movie came up to me and said, I saw your show. You and Eugenio are great. We're going to Broadway. I'm taking you to Broadway. I'm putting money down. We're going to Broadway. Thinking, wow, that's amazing. Finally, that person came that you always hope for. And I said, we're going to Broadway. Well, he was indicted by the FCC, I think one of those organizations. Now he lives in Brazil. Of course, none of the money came back. And we wasn't going to Broadway. So Eugenio Derbez looked at me and goes, are we going to Broadway? I couldn't break his heart. Little Eugenio believed in Broadway more than I did. And I said, yes, we're going to Broadway. And you know what we're going to do? I'm going to figure out how we go to Broadway. So there was a theater there. It was called Town Hall. It's a 1,000-seat theater, a Broadway-sized theater. And I said, I'm taking all my money and I'm renting the Town Hall for one night. One night I'm going to rent the Town Hall. I did not tell my wife, which is really strong jeopardy. I had at that time $50,000 in the bank. I took the money out. I wrote checks. 2 days before the play was happening, I called up, how many tickets sold? 50. 50 tickets sold 2 days before. Oh my God, $50,000 about to be lost. And I have to explain to my wife why it's $50,000 is gone. True story. I said, Eugenio, we're gonna lose really big right now. We can't let that happen. So I called up a radio show called Salón de la Mañana. Salón de la Mañana, you guys know it? New York show? Yeah. Okay. Of course I did. My Spanish is, yeah. Not my Spanish, I was never good at Spanish. But I said, I gotta get you on. So I'd say, Eugenio, go to that radio show and you be out the door. And he goes, what? I'm just gonna go there? Okay, go. So he went there, he stood there, and I called up the radio show. I said, Eugenio Derbez is outside that door right now. Let him on the show. Let him on the show. You have to let him on the show right now. He's outside the door. And I said, no, he can't be outside the door. Open the door. It's Eugenio Derbez. Here he is. They put him on the show. He told everyone, please come to the show. Please come to the show. By the time it was done, by the time we went out and I talked to everybody, I took our Latino community and invigorated them like a political campaign. I said, you need to sit there and support Latinos on Hollywood. You need to support Latinos on Broadway, because that's your image. You're gonna see yourself on Broadway. And you know what? That night, we had it filled, Town Hall. And it convinced one producer that, you know something? A Latino show might work. We went to Broadway. We did over 137 performances on Broadway with an extension. No one in the history of Broadway for a play had ever done that. John Leguizamo was successful, we were successful, and after us came the Heights. We believed in ourselves. We had no choice. We put the money down. I was gonna get in a fight with my wife. Nothing makes a man work harder than knowing you're gonna be in trouble with your woman, guaranteed. I think it's women that have made our world so much better. Thank you. You scare the hell out of us, okay? We will make a Broadway show work. We'll do whatever it takes to make sure you're happy. That's what we do. And that show was successful. So when you think about it in my life, what I've seen is these successes that can happen. And I look at all the Latinos here and I look and see how impressive it is what you're doing. How impressive education is. You know, the movie Cesar Chavez came out. And the movie came out and some people it didn't do very well, about $3 million. Some people were upset. And there was talk about it, you know, and I thought about it, and I wrote an op-ed piece about it, and I've written op-eds for the Huffington Post and all sorts of different people. But I'll tell you a story, how I really feel about it. I remember years ago, when I was starting out in Hollywood, my cousins, 2 of them are married to Cesar Chavez's daughters. They called me up. They said, Rick, you're a Hollywood guy. We'd like you to MC this event. Would you MC it? There'll be a lot of Hollywood people there for Cesar and the UFW. And I said, sure, I'll MC it. So I go up there, looking sharp in my tuxedo. I didn't have a name tag, I was very proud. There I was up there, and Cesar Chavez was there. I noticed something very powerful to me. There was Martin Sheen, every single star you can imagine on the dais, right there. And that's where I was sitting. And Cesar was there, and then I looked to my right, and Cesar was no longer there. He had left. And I looked out in the audience, and I noticed he was going to each and every single table with every member of the UFW, and he made them his friends. He was not a leader. He was a servant. That's true Latino leadership. Cesar Chavez never made more than $6,000 in his lifetime in a year. Cesar Chavez didn't own a car. Cesar Chavez didn't own his own home. Cesar Chavez gave himself to people for a cause, and he believed. That's what you are doing here. Everyone has sacrificed so much to get us all here. Every one of us, our families, all that. You hear stories, of people talking about their families behind us. Because the truth is, your angel investor, your family, is the same investor every one of you have had. Our families. Who we are as a people. So when I hear about the media writing stories such as that 80% of us are involved in crime and things like that, I think we have to change that narrative. We have to change that story. And what changes that story is writers. We tell our stories. What changes that story is, unfortunately, we have to be the first. I was one of the first on Broadway. I don't want to be the first. I want to be one of many. I don't want to be the leader. I want to lead myself first. I want to serve others. And in that, be that example to lead others. I've never been the best of anything. I've had to do many things, direct, produce, all that stuff. I've done very smart things, I must say. I hired people that were smarter than me every single time. That's how you do it. Rafael Agustin, who's here, he's one of my partners in Hollywood, great writer. He's smarter than me. He's smarter than me. I was smart enough to hire him. And you know something? He's Ecuadorian. Yeah, this is one. Ceviche, all right. All he talks about is the ceviche Ecuadorians make. I'm like, I gotta taste this stuff. What is this about? Ecuadorian. And you know something about him? He never knew that he was undocumented when he first came to America. He never knew it. The only time he learned it is when he went to apply for college. I was like, my God, Rafa, you're the first dreamer I've actually met. This is amazing. You were undocumented. Yes, and he got his document, and he became an American citizen the first day at UCLA, correct? At UCLA. Imagine that. He went on to get a master's degree. A very smart man. Speaks Spanish much better than I do. Spells better than I do. I have dyslexia, horrible dyslexia, and I'm a writer. Can you imagine that? That's also not letting anyone say no to you. Saying yes. We talked about Whoopi Goldberg. They said that Whoopi Goldberg, for me, was influential on my life. I remember I was an actor at the Old Globe Theater. I started off as an actor. I was a Shakespearean actor. Why? Because my father took me to a movie called Cromwell. And in this movie had Richard Harris. And at one point they're up there and Richard Harris throws down the gauntlet and says, there will be education in England. There will be all these beautiful things he talked about. And my father, who went to Toastmasters, as this Mexican man who went to Toastmasters who could sell, he looked at me and goes, if you could speak as beautiful as that, I would be so proud of you. Wow. Nothing makes a Latino work harder than our families being proud of us. This is why we do it. You know, when people talk about our families, and they show our families that isn't the Latino we see, we do it out of that pride. And so I went to the Old Globe Theater at 17. There was auditions. I said, but soft, but light through yonder window breaks. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sonning. And I did the whole monologue. They said, you've got a job. They hired me. I told my dad I'm a Shakespearean actor now. I thought you could actually make a living as a Shakespearean actor at the time. And I was still Mexican. I wore the tights, a little bit saggy. I had a sword that was looking cool. I was in a gang called the Capulets. I was okay. But there was another actor there, black black woman, single mother. She says, hey, Rick, they're having auditions for Second City Improv. They're doing auditions. It's an improv audition. I said, really? Well, I don't know anything about improv. And she said, you know something? Look it up. So I looked up improv, and you know what improv said? Improv, you have to say yes to everything. Say yes. Say yes. So if you start an improv, you go, that's a big boat. Yes, it is. It's a huge boat. That's a pirate. Oh my God, yes, it is. It's a big pirate up there. And it's yes. Everything is yes, so it moves the story along, and it's yes, 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 yes. So I auditioned for Second City, and there I am auditioning. And they go, have you ever done improv before? Yes, I have. Would you like to do improv now? Yes, I would. And all of a sudden, I get another job. Second City Improv, and the other actor was Whoopi Goldberg. And Whoopi said, Rick, you should write. We're here for fate. Latinos, we believe in fate, isn't that right? Yes. We believe there's some sort of divine hand on our lives, and that divine hand moves us, and that divine hand moves us somewhere. There's a reason you're in this room. That's fate. There's a reason you're here to hear me speak. There's a reason here I'm supposed to engage in you. There's fate. And that's what I saw. And she said, you should write. I'm not listening to fate right now. I'm not going to write. Then all of a sudden I moved to Hollywood, and there I am working as an actor, doing all those, like they said, crime shows. I was a Cuban drug lord, which is the highest form of drug lord there is, because you can sing and dance and move. It's great, you know. I sound like Desi Arnaz being a Cuban drug lord. Hey, Babalo, don't come near me, okay? And I was that. And George Clooney was the good drug lord because he was white, and I was a bad drug lord because I was Latino. And we were both drug lords in Red Surf, this film. And I said, I can't play these roles anymore. I said, I need to write to change the story so I can play roles that I want to do. So my neighbor turned to me, once again, hand of God knocking on that door. And he says, Rick, you should write. Ah, John, I'm not a writer. I'm an actor. I used to be a Shakespearean actor, but there's no jobs for Shakespearean actors. I'm an actor. He goes, write. I go, really, write? He goes, write. That man was John Wells, president of the WGA and the creator of West Wing. Whoopi Goldberg told me to write. John Wells told me to write. It took at least 3 different people to tell me yes. How many times have I heard stories from people? I heard stories where people go, there's a mentor in your life that says, hey, fill out the application to Harvard, am I right? Fill that out. How many times do you need to knock on the door to see that you need and deserve to be successful as a Latino? Success is our next thing we must do. We have to. We have families that rely on us. We are the leadership. There's no two ways about it. Recognize your leader and go forward with that. Go to serve. When I told you I was in a coma, I really was. When I was doing all that work, I was in a coma. What happened is I collapsed. I had lung pneumonia. I didn't know it, so I kept working still. Family, no, gotta stop working, come on. I kept working. Finally, went home. I felt my lungs filling up. This is wrong, something's up. I don't know, no, I'll be better. Tomorrow I gotta go back to work. I had worked myself to death. Collapsed. Struck my head right here. Horrible brain injury. In fact, I didn't have much memory. They thought I was gonna die. My own pastor came to the hospital and said, doesn't look good. I thought, you're supposed to be confident. Boy, friends like you, I mean, come on. My wife held my hand. She said, please, Rick, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. I squeezed her hand. I don't remember this. I remember I was in a coma. I didn't know much. I was in a Glasgow 3 in the coma scale, which is, I don't know if there's any medical people here. Is there any? Well, Glasgow coma scale, pretty bad, right? A 3 in the coma scale? Not good. Around 3, you're not driving yourself to work or anything like that. You're taking some time off. So they intubated me, they put a tube down my throat and all that, and everyone waited for me to die. Brain swelling, almost dead. This is a comedy part. I look like a medical drama, not a comedian. Not a person that writes comedy like in Living Color and Mad TV and shows like that. Not a person that writes books. So I didn't die. Eventually I came out of it. Eventually they took the tube out of my throat, and there was a nurse standing there, and I began to achieve the world of comedy. I told the nurse to come toward me. I shouldn't tell the story, it's Harvard, but I will. I said, come here, with my hand. Come here, come here. Do you know how to get a man out of a coma? Give him Viagra, that'll get him up. I collapsed again. Very dramatic. My wife came in. She said, Rick, so many people are worried about you. Sofia Vergara. My eyes opened once more time. And she goes, Sofia Vergara's manager. Oh, they closed. I've worked with Sofia. I've worked with all these different Latino stars. But I realized we were all a family. People prayed for me. Lupe Ontiveros, who played over 300 maids in her lifetime, she prayed for me. She sent me a beautiful note, a voicemail, about how we're praying for you. I realized I wasn't alone, that I had a family, and that family was Latino. And that's what we celebrate, our family, without limits, because together there are no limits. I'll tell you a story that my father used to always tell me. This would give me the greatest strength I think I ever had, because our stories come from people around us. That's how we do it. That's why we do it, is our families. My father turned to me one day, and he knew I was going up to Hollywood, and he knew I was going to try to make it as an actor and all that stuff, and a writer, and he didn't know what was going to happen to me, but he said, you know, Rick, let me tell you, he was a door-to-door salesman. He'd go every day, door-to-door, sell pots and pans. And of course, he worked every other job, North Island Naval Air Station. My mother worked as a waitress and banquet captain and everything else. As a kid, I grew up poor. I mean, I remember she would bring home food from the banquets, and I would eat it all the time. I looked like Henry V, because it was like lobster, crab, steak, really like horrible kind of food for a little kid to eat. You know, caviar. She worked at a really fancy place. Smoked oysters, all that kind of world. But my father told me, when he took me to that movie and all those kind of worlds, and how he wanted me to think and be more of who I am, and to love my culture and be proud of it, to see that's an asset to us. It is an asset. He said, I knock on a door every single day. I knock on about 100 doors. One door, another door, and I hear no every time. No. No. But around the 100th door, I hear yes. You got to knock on a lot of doors and hear no before you hear that one yes. I remember that. I made it part of my DNA. So I get turned down more than I get a yes answer. 100 times more. You know, that's what happens. Every time I hear no, I know I'm getting closer to that one yes. And that's why I do it. And that's why I get to do what I do. It's a chance to speak to all you. To be at Harvard, I gotta tell you, I'm impressed. Hollywood, we don't get impressed by many things. I made every star I do that. For some reason, Harvard impresses me. Because the age and the depth of Harvard, Crimson, all those things, it's a proud heritage. And now you are changing that dynamic here. You are the Latinos. They're gonna bring in the other Latinos. Because you have to reach back and bring everyone in. And when I think the Latinos in my life, the Cesar Chavez's, my father's, all those people, my mother's, everyone, seeing what they've done for me is amazing. I'll tell you one story. What came out of Broadway, one of the most beautiful moments that ever happened to me when I was on Broadway. I was at Sardi's restaurant, and they put my picture up in Sardi's. They painted it. Oddly, I look white in it. I don't know why. They just did a whitenizing of me. There I was. And that's why I came with the term, Almost White, the book. The reason Almost White, because in Hollywood, we're not black, we're not white, we're Latino. To them, we're almost white. So they forget about us. They don't acknowledge us. They don't know who we are. They misrepresent us. And a lot of times, since we're the nicest culture in the world, and sometimes we don't get angry when we should. When I look at the 2 million Latinos that have been deported during this administration, more than Bush, I get angry. Because I see what happens. But we're good people. So this busboy there, and I would give tickets to all the people to go see my show. Anytime I saw a Latino, tickets were $80. Half the Latinos I knew could never afford that. The busboys couldn't afford it. So I had rich white people and a few rich Mexicans in my audience. And so I said, give a ticket to the busboy. The busboy saw I forgot about that. And there I was at Sardi's, and he walks up to me and goes, excuse me, I saw your show last night. Thank you for the tickets. He goes, you give me a voice who has no voice. Thank you. That was one of the most profound and touching things I'd heard. He was a common man. He was a hero in my eyes, just like my father was. Because heroes aren't, as what we see, great people that do heroic things. To me, a hero is someone who is not a great person, that chooses, that tries, that does heroic deeds. That to me is a hero. The mothers that have raised us, who worked so many jobs, are heroes. They're not here, they're not famous. The fathers who worked at North Island Naval Air Station, a place like that, who gave back, they're my heroes. That busboy is my hero. Those are the people I care about. Those are the people I want to give a voice to. Those are the people we all have to give a voice to. We have to give back. And that's what I'm doing in Hollywood. There's very few Latinos, very few writers, very few writers. I was once on a plane with Josefina Lopez. She wrote Real Women Have Curves. I written Nothing Like the Holidays, that movie with John Leguizamo. We were both on the plane. There was one other writer. She did La Misma Luna or something like that. And I said, if we crash right now, half of Hollywood is destroyed. Half of Hollywood is destroyed. Latino Hollywood would be wiped out. It'd be like that Big Bopper plane crash. I mean, it would have been the day the music died if we would have died. And I thought about it and how sad that is. But what I hope, Latino law, policy, and business, that we all three work together. Because without entertainment, without Hollywood, without business investing in Hollywood and making those stories get out and be told, we're losing. The biggest thing I see nowadays, not only the problems, and she was right this morning, immigration, the sad part about immigration, it puts everything about that and it forgets all the other issues about Latinos, issues such as education, how we should be educated more than incarcerated. Those issues becomes immigration, and since no one will do anything about it, it becomes our dialogue. Storytelling. I want to see those things change. And that's what I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing those things because I believe in all of us. And when I look out here and I see who you are, and I see the bright, smart, intelligent, beautiful Latinos looking back at me, I realize, one, we're a family, and two, we're together, without limits. Thank you.
Big round of applause, please. Thank you very much, Rick. I appreciate it. We're going to have a Q&A
Yes,
for the next couple of minutes. So if you have questions for Rick, please raise your hand. And we have a very special treat. If you do ask a question, Rick is going to give you his book for free.
I'm going to give you my book for free for one reason. I'm investing in you. I believe in that. I'm giving you a book for free to invest in you. Now, tweet about it, tell all your friends, spread the word. And that's called marketing, okay?
Let's get a photo with here.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yes.
This is what we do in Hollywood. Everyone else waits, and then we take a picture.
Okay.
So who has a question? We'll start over here with the lady, of course. Ladies, are you all right with that, Brian? Okay, thank you.
Hi, it was great hearing from you. So my name is Jackie Burgos, and I'm at the business school, and my background is in entertainment, and I'm joining entertainment, and I'm very passionate about diversifying the industry. But I just really don't understand what the issues are, why it's still not reflective of the world, because the numbers are there. So when you think about, when you're pitching shows, what's still the pushback that you get that is preventing these people from diversifying TV the way it should be?
Well, the pushback you get is no. That's the pushback you get. It's pretty quick. You know, they'll look and go, we're not ready quite yet for Latinos. I've done over 4 pilots for the networks, written them. They're good pilots, they're great. Last year, I went out with a pitch with George Lopez, me, the creator of Mad TV and Lionsgate and Televisa behind me. Couldn't get it on the air. Now, what I've learned from that, you know something? Next time I'm not gonna go to them. I'm gonna go to some financiers and some businessmen and say, you know something? We need your money, we'll put it on the air, the market will come. That's the best way. Desi Arnaz was the first one that did that in Hollywood. Look what he did. He created CBS, he created Paramount. He really created all those shows with Desi Lu and I Love Lucy. More people watched an episode of I Love Lucy than the presidential inauguration during his time. a Cuban man who used to clean bird cages, his own words. So I really think that I'm going to get pushback all the time. I expect it. Give me that no. I'm not going to listen to it. I'll keep coming here. I'll keep knocking on the door. They'll eventually say yes. You can't change who you are to fit them. I can't walk into a room and they say no. Well, it doesn't have to be Latino. It could be Latino and maybe this and maybe that. And what do you need? No. You walk in with the product you believe in. Any business will tell you this. Sell what you know. I know this product. I believe in this product. This is what I want to see. And I know there's an audience for this. And guess what's happening right now? Now what's happening is the media is splitting into smaller and smaller groups. You heard that this morning. It's very true. So what happens is I can sit there and take a cue, and I've worked with a man named Ray Williams Johnson. I learned a very big, important lesson from him. He has a show called Equals 3. Ray Williams Johnson. 12 million subscribers, 2 billion views on YouTube. He's the first YouTube millionaire. He started in his little apartment and just told jokes and got on the air. That's called the democratization of the media. In other words, you don't need a studio. I used to need, coming up to Warner Brothers and all those places. I don't need that anymore. I don't need it. I can bring it directly to the consumer. That gives us power. So when they say no, I'm not worried about that part. I expect a no. I know eventually they'll have to say yes, because eventually we are, as Latinos, the solution, never the problem. Always remember that mantra. We are the solution, not the problem. We are the solution, not the problem. Just say it with me. We are the solution, not the problem. They need us desperately. Sometimes they don't know it. We'll explain it to them in English or Spanish. But we'll explain it. Yes.
Hi, Rick. My name is Brian Castro, and I'm from Iowa State University. And I still cannot get over your first story. When you got that response from the teacher, what happened next? And also, though, like, we are at different times now, and some of those stories still happen, and though now they're known as microaggressions, how can we teach our Latino youth to actually handle those types of situations?
They're called microaggressions? Wow, you guys are so much smarter than me. I can't go, I just observed a microaggression that just happened to me. I will not stand for that microaggression. No. So now I'm learning from you, so that's beautiful. This is the great thing about education. We learn from each other. That story, what happened, was a true story. I mean, at that time in La Mesa, there's very few Mexican kids in our little neighborhood. So now I don't look all that Mexican to some people. I'm very güero, come from Chihuahua people. They're tall, I'll tell you a quick joke. My sister's really dark. She has a lot of Indian blood in her, and I have a lot of Spanish blood in me. I know that because when I was growing up, I made her build me beautiful Spanish missions in my backyard. I stole her gold and gave her chicken pox and measles. That was my joke. I would tell people. I'm taking my honest reality and putting it out there because that makes me accessible. I'm just telling the truth, and when you tell the truth, it's very brave. So the story about that woman, nothing happened to her. I really thought I had beat this kid up for no reason because she said it with such niceness and clarity. Like if someone said, you're a man, I hit him. Well, you are a man. So I said, well, she goes, are you Mexican? She meant it. I said, she didn't think I was Mexican. I said, yeah, I'm Mexican. She goes, well, then you are a wetback. Why would you strike him? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Now, of course, years later, I'm filled with rage and angry. I got so angry with my microaggression that it happened to me that I wrote a play about it. And that play sold 1 million in ticket sales. That's how you do it. You want revenge? You want to win? Become successful. It's the best revenge. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ana Maria Guadarrama. I graduated from Utah State University, and I'm currently doing a Fulbright English teaching assistantship in Mexico. And my question is regarding, you talked about how you're güero, and you keep mentioning güero, and you mentioned how you don't speak Spanish the way that other people speak it. And so I'm wondering if you could talk more about your identity as a Latino, and also the title of your book, Almost White.
Good question. Some really good questions. Latino women, I tell you.
Thank you,
She has made a little web that I could just really hurt myself. You answered this badly. Like a landmine of questions there. Wow, I love how women think. That's great. Okay, the title, Almost White, does not mean I want to be white. I love being Latino. Almost white is how the media sees me. Not me. I'm Latino. I'm Mexican American. I'm sometimes Hispanic. Sometimes I'm Chicano. That's who I am. I'm many things. Almost white. When I talk about güero, I'm really talking about the historical cultural fact of Mexico. Our indigenous culture and our European culture. That's where güero is. And there is racism in Mexico. I worked for Televisa, and I've witnessed racism up close. In Mexico, I'm cool. I'm great. It's wonderful to be in Mexico. My sister may not be so cool. Now, when it comes to Spanish, I'll answer that one too. The three things. I've never been ashamed of my Spanish culture, language, anything like that. The difference was what really happened to me was a reality. The reality is I grew up in La Mesa. There were only 3 Mexican families there, and Juan Vargas, Elena Ochoa. And what happened was my brother was born with a cleft palate. He was born with a cleft palate, and he could not speak very well. Went to the hospital, they fixed him. My mother told me the story. She took 3 buses to find a speech therapist that could understand him. And that speech therapist said, no one should speak Spanish in your home anymore until he speaks. Because I can't reach him, that's what she said. I could understand at that time. Name how many Mexican American or Latino speech therapists there were. 0. So we stopped speaking Spanish. We stopped speaking Spanish. Now, I'm an old dog. I gotta tell you, I speak English very well. I write books, I write. That's my way. For me to switch into Spanish, and I have. I was on Despierta America one time. They interviewed me. I've been on a lot of different Spanish television. When I speak Spanish, it sounds so cute. It really does. It sounds cute. Like, hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Yo soy Rick Najera. Muy orgulloso, escritor. And I know how ridiculous that sounds. I'm going back to being a 5-year-old kid when I'm speaking. So that's reality. Now, when it comes to identity, I'm not denying any part of myself. Don't let a Latino tell you you're not Latino enough. Don't let an Anglo tell you you're not American enough. You see what I'm talking about? We are the ones who decide who we are. I have 3 children. 3. That's such a guy thing. I have 3 children. My 3 children are half Irish, half Mexican. I call them Mexicans. They're Mexican. They speak beautiful Spanish. You know why? I forced them to go to Spanish language school and enrolled them. I got them there. They're forced to speak Spanish every day. I call it Spanish waterboarding. They're like, agua, agua, agua. Te gusta agua. No más agua, no más agua. They're forced to learn Spanish. And they are very güero. Very güero looking. My wife has blue eyes, blonde hair. My kids look güero. My joke is, if we ever get put in a little camp, they're cutting me out. They'll be on the other side of the barbed wire. They're getting daddy out. That's true of our people. We've always been mixed. We've always been mixed. From dark to light, we are a mixed culture. That is our strength. That is our strength, because when I walk into a room, I can bring an Ecuadorian with their ceviche, and I can bring a Puerto Rican with that great lechon. And I love Puerto Ricans. They're born with citizenship. They're cool. We need them. I'm a little jealous, Argentinians, you're not European, but they're here too. I know all these things. Cubans, okay. But the point is this, that's our strength. We are a powerful culture with many other tribes within that culture and many other stories, and each one of those stories is completely valid. So when I say my identity, I know who Rick Najera is. I am ironic. I am who I am. My name's not Ricardo. It's not Xochimilco. It's Rick. Rick Najera. One of the greatest writers of Mexico is Gutierrez Najera. That's my family line. I was meant to be a writer. I was meant to do these stories. That's my culture. I'm not going to be the perfect Latino. I'm not going to be the perfect American. I'm not going to be perfect at anything. But I will do heroic things. That's the whole point of it. So that's my identity. Does that answer your question? Did I do okay?
We have time for one more question over here, Rick, over here.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cynthia Gomez. I work at the School of Public Health for Harvard. I am Ecuadorian, so yes,
Ecuadorian.
our ceviche is great. I have a question. As you know, a Latina, we grow up with novelas.
Yes.
Would you say that shows like Univision or like all their programming and novelas, and Telemundo just came out with a new one, and very current, on La Viuda Negra, and how her life as a Colombian dealer and whatnot was lucrative, but also kind of amazing. Would you say that hurts our image, or should we be empowered and continue those efforts so we're somehow out there?
It's a good question. I'll tell you the answer to that. Because sometimes people will come to me and they'll go, oh, devious maids. How dare Eva do devious maids? And I'm not against Eva at all. Or how dare, George Lopez do this character? The problem is we can't, as artists, have on our shoulders everybody to get it right. It's not entertainment. Italians had The Godfather. That's the way it was. We will take stories. How many slave stories have come from the African American community? There are stories and narratives that we do understand. It's not the problem that Telemundo or Univision comes up with a narco corrido or a song or about that world. The problem is there's not many other stories other than that one. You understand what I'm saying? So if I sit there and come up with, I just did a pilot in Najera in America, like a Latino Colbert, I want to do that story. That's my next story I really want to do. And you do that story because they don't see Latinos on the news. And when they're on the news, 50 were crossing the border and this is what happened. There's not a newsman talking as a Latino. And I love that sort of story. So I try not to focus on the negative and point out Univision or these other places. Listen, Univision has a guy called Platanito with a banana on his head and with weird clown makeup. I go, that's not me, but he has every right to do that, and he has an audience for that. Now I need to do me so we can look at Latinos and say, there's Rick Najera, there's Charlie, there's Rafa, there's all these other Latinos and who we are, so they understand that we're not just some one group of people. Every time one Latino does something wrong, we go, oh God, oh no, tell me it wasn't a Puerto Rican. Tell me, oh God, it was a Puerto Rican. We're constantly apologizing. There's 53 million Latinos in the United States. One of them is gonna do something bad. Let's tell the story about the millions that pay taxes, that go to church, that give back to this community. We don't tell those stories, and that's the real problem. And I can't focus on Univision and say, well, they're doing that story about a Colombian woman. Of course, it's exciting to be a drug lord. No one said it wasn't. It's fun. People try to kill you. You got a lot of money. It's fun. And that's what people look at. You just show the other stories. I'll take one more question. Can we do one more? Yes.
I was going to ask you something along the lines of what you asked. Was there something that you're looking to write about that talks about more of the underlining aspects that Hispanics go through? And what I mean by that is a lot of times we try to target the bigger topics, but we don't underline the smaller topics, as in how Latinos tend to pick on each other or tend to make fun of each other.
I agree. That's some of the things. One, we have to regulate ourselves. I think sometimes we have to walk up to Latinos and go, give me your Latino card, I'm tearing it up. I'm tearing your Latino card up right now. You're a bad Latino. We need a Latino police to go, you can be Armenian, you can be anything else, you're not Latino anymore. Tear up that damn card, you're busted. That's what we need. So sometimes we have to sit there and say, come on. As Latinos, come on. What's wrong with you? You're making me look bad. Stop it. So yes, I've had, I'm a Chicano. Two of my cousins, Mary Cesar Chavez, I'm as Chicano as it gets, right? I couldn't get enough money to go to USC. I wanted to go to USC. I had no money to go to USC. My father was a sheet metal worker. My mom was a waitress. At that time, years ago, I won't even say the age because it would age me. Lincoln was still president? No. I couldn't get into Harvard or USC, let alone Harvard. I couldn't even imagine Harvard. They'd be like, go to Mars to me. USC, I was like, I was accepted in the BFA program as an actor. No one had been accepted Latino-wise, and I was. Didn't have enough money, so I went to Mecha. So I go to Mecha and I'm there talking to Mecha. My dad goes, go to Mecha, they'll help you. They'll help you. So I go to my people, right? I walk on up there, hey, Mecha. And they go, let me tell you something. I got a problem with you. Look at you. Oh, güero, look at you. Talking bad Spanish. We don't think you've suffered enough pain and prejudice in your lifetime to join our Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano. Say, Aslan. I'm like, Xochimilco, Cuauhtémoc, does right now count? 'Cause you're being prejudiced against me right now. I didn't go to USC. I'm going to speak at Stanford next. I'll speak at Wellesley on the 8th. I get to speak at USC, but I didn't have enough money to go. So yes, of course I'll tell those stories. You have to. You have to tell the stories. You have to talk about Latinos as who we are. We're complex people. If people didn't like the movie Cesar Chavez, the only reason I didn't, I knew Cesar, and it wasn't like him in the movie. Cesar was much more vibrant, much more, than the movie I saw. And first of all, who shows a movie about a fast? That's got to be the most boringest thing action you're ever going to show. It's like, oh, not eating. Malcolm X got guys doing all sorts of cool stuff. The Mexicans, I'm not eating anything. I'll show them. Some of our movies, walk out. We walked out and kept walking. We have a real dropout rate. Come on now. But that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to, as a comic and as a writer, to bring up those issues no one sees. I love Cesar Chavez. I have pictures with him. And I'll tell you, what Cesar Chavez really wanted was education. I'm on the board of Field, which is farm workers leadership education. My cousin runs it. The other cousin, the daughter of Cesar Chavez, runs it too. And guess what? You know what Field's about? Getting Latinos out of the fields into the new fields. Banking, science, finance, medical. Those are our new fields we're supposed to be in, not the fields. Eventually a robot will pick that lettuce, okay? We need to be somewhere else, and that's what we have to do. So it's a complex issues. These are all complex issues. You can't answer them really quickly, but each one of our work will change that narrative. So yes, I will answer those questions. And one last thing I'll say. I need to learn as well. My kids are Mexicans, and when I came to Harvard, I met a girl. She was there at the party the other night. I think her name was Courtney. Was she here? Courtney. There's Courtney. Well, Courtney, what's your last name? Benford. Benford. She walks up to me and goes, hello, I'm Courtney Benford. I go, of course you are. That's perfect. Courtney Benford, you're the waspiest name I've ever heard. Courtney Benford should be Benford Hall. How you doing? I'm Courtney. We're talking, and I'm joking with her because I'm easy. I'm accessible, guys. I'm a real person, so I'm joking with her. And she had who was saying? Is that what's your name? Jeff Charleston. Jeff Charleston. Courtney Benford and Jeff Charleston came up to me at Harvard, introduced themselves, spoke to me a while. I had a great time. I said, I'm in Harvard now, Courtney. Well, guess what? Courtney's a Mexican. Her mother is Mexican. Now look at her. She doesn't look Mexican. Güera. But you know something? Yeah. She got it through the Mexican tunnel? But look, see that? You're studying at Harvard, right? Studying her? Okay, studying at Harvard. Even we have to look closer. We're human. We have to go, you know something, let me learn the narrative. Wow, Courtney Benford made me feel slightly stupid. And I love her for that. That's who we are. We're Courtney Benford. We're a Puerto Rican who's dark. We call him a Jibaro, I don't care. We're New Yorican, we're Colombian, we're all these different things. It's who we are. And we will never let anyone tell us we're not Latino enough or we're not enough of anything. Because if we're not enough, we'll learn. And that's what education is about. Thank you so much.